Welcome to Wizard Team, a Black magical podcast for Black magical stories.
Hi everyone, it's Bayana and Robyn embarking on a journey through the many fantasy stories written by and about Black people. Currently, we're reading Amari and the Despicable Wonders by B.B. Alston, and today we're finishing up the book by discussing chapters 31 and 32.
But first, previously on Wizard Team, Peekaboo comes to the rescue, and our crew escapes the sightless depths despite the Goblin King's wishes or whatever else is going on in this kingdom. We meet Anansi and Arachne, who are eternal spiders, they give them time to rest and then also reveal Amari's fate to at least what's been interpreted that she will die defeating Dylan. She keeps this news secret from her friends, despite them showing that they're willing to show up for her, and kind of because of that too. And then they find the Wonders, but are thwarted by Dylan, who has blackmailed Lucas. Or is it blackmailed? Or like he's holding Hannah hostage, so it's more of a
I think it's blackmail. Yeah.
I'm not well versed on the
he's threatening Lucas with Hannah's
not well versed on the criminal terminology.
You haven't entered your villain secret
right yet. And then we head to the bureau to find out that the agents have basically walked into a trap, and that's kind of where we're at. They use Dylan has used Harlow's voice recording to get them all to like basically
surrender.
Basically surrender, and they're kind of frozen and at the mercy of Dylan and his 30 magicians, because he don't even have the rest of the league anymore. He just got
I think it's about 50 is what
my fault
Amari said.
He got about 20 more.
Yeah,
but there were hundreds before, and now they're
so Magnus and Harlow, Amari and Laura are all at the bureau watching this on like live feeds, which I think is so funny. Like, is it or not? Is it body cams, or did they tap into the feed of the warehouse? Maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But Magnus and Harlow are shocked that the agents have surrendered, and then Harlow explains that she didn't mean for this to happen, but you only actually need to believe that the words are meant for you for her magic to work, and to be controlled by her magic. So I think that's like a very interesting and probably the most thorough explanation we've gotten about like how her magic actually works, and that's why it works with the recordings, and you don't even need to be in the same room. Like, she was able to control Laura over the phone. So Amari asked Magnus to trust her and to let her borrow his cell phone, and to give her a transporter to go to the warehouse. And that's it. She's not explaining anything. He's like, and she's like, trust me.
Trust, cell phone, warehouse. Or transporter.
Trust, transporter,
cell phone.
That's all.
I mean,
that's all she wants from him.
Well, I'll let you finish the
summary. And then she asked Laura if Laura will trust her and go with her. And Laura's like, of course, but why are we being so like final and somber about this? And Amari's like, I guess I'm just being dramatic.
She's not a great
but
liar,
also then turned around and was somber and dramatic again with Magnus. So then they transport to the warehouse, and they see Dylan surrounded by Cosmo and his about 50 more magicians. And Amari has the same thought that you had, which is like, oh, he's been snatching up people's magic left and right, and he looks unhinged. Because what we learned earlier about the crown, Vladimir's crown, or the crown of whatever it's called, is a wonder, and it allows you to hold unlimited magic, but the side effect is like you go crazy. It messes with your mind. And so the reason why they have all these apprentices and all these magicians is that it allows to like lessen the amount of magic that the crown holder is absorbing, mm-hmm. and then keeps them a bit more sane. Amari's like, woo, 50 is not enough because you look terrible. And so Dylan's looking unhinged as he's holding the lens of increase above the anti-magic coming out of the broken horn wonder. So he's broken that wonder and is using the lens of increase to like not only like take out the anti-magic but control it. So it's like swirling around in like a blue orb. And then he starts to play with the agents. He's like swooping the orb around. He's like, let's try out my new toy, because he has lost it. And then he just wipes out a squadron of agents. So I don't know. I know it said like there were like hundreds, like the entire bureau and some other bureau, like not just the Atlanta bureau, mm-hmm. but like other bureaus have like sent in reinforcements. So it's not just like the agents from Atlanta, but like a lot of agents from like different. Isn't Atlanta like the only American one, or is it just different regions?
It sounded like Atlanta was the only American one to me, because they usually mention like London or
yeah.
I think there's one in Australia, right? That's where Laura got her.
Yeah, I'm like, do we have Canadian Mounties and Mexican agents, Federale coming? Right. Magical Federale. Mm-hmm. But there's squadrons, so there's a lot of agents, and he's wiping them out. And then he spots these two agents who have their like helmets and masks on, and it's Vanquish. And Dylan starts to play with them, and Laura, who is like with Amari, and Amari's like, we have to focus, we have to like get to where we're going. As soon as Dylan like unmasks and it starts like, what is it called? Messing with like taunting Vanquish, and then threatening them, Laura like jumps out and is like, I'm gonna save them. Mm-hmm. And Amari is like, oh shit, but then takes that time and sneaks into the office and plays a video that Laura had sent her from Jurg, plays like a specific point in that video over the loudspeaker, and it's Harlow saying, on second thought, forget what I just said, over the loudspeaker. So then that frees up the rest of the agents that haven't been wiped out. Mm-hmm. And then all heck breaks loose. And there's a skirmish, a battle. Yeah. There's a battle. And at the same time, Dylan was searching for Amari, and when this happens, he runs away. And Amari's like, what? But mm-hmm. when he runs, he drops the lens of increase. So for a second, she's like, oh, got it. And then she's like, oh, no, that will help me win this battle, but not the war. Mm-hmm. So Amari... we learned too that the side effect of the lens of increase is that like Dylan doesn't have any. Amari's like, you got about as much magic as I do right now, right? Mm-hmm. So he doesn't have. When you use the lens of increase, you lose your access to magic.
But I think it sounded like temporary.
Temporary, yeah. It'll come back, but for now, in this moment, they are both magicless. And so Amari just catches up with Dylan, stuns him with her stick, and then decides that like the best way to end this whole thing is to destroy the crown. And so she uses the regretful blade and destroys the crown, and then pretty immediately starts to feel cold and starts to like fade in and out. Mm-hmm. And as she's like fading in and out, she's seeing like Quentin picking her up, and then she sees Agent Magnus, and she's still gripping the blade in her hand, and Agent Magnus is like trying to take it from her, and then like says like, let me do this or something, and then she releases the blade to Magnus.
Should have been Director Van Helsing.
Whew!
He should have atoned for all these sins.
Should have been. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Oh man, that makes me so sad now.
Why not him?
Why not?
Take him instead.
You can have him.
Mm-hmm.
So first things first, going all the way back. Harlow seems like really like horrified by the way Dylan used her magic against the agents. And it just brought up these questions of like Harlow's like strange morality.
Yeah.
And like and guilt around that, because she's like, I did not want that. Like this isn't, you know.
But I don't like, I think she just doesn't like, she doesn't like magicians, and she's made that really clear. I don't know that we ever really figured out what her deal was, because sometimes it felt a little more personal than just like the regular like bigotry, but maybe that's something we'll find out later. And it could also be partially that she can't control them, and that's like adds to her.
I thought about it as like she can't control them, and a lot of her whole deal essentially, beyond the magician thing, but like in like taking over the bureau and stuff, is that she's been clamped down. Like Merlin, she's not been able to use her powers.
Right.
And so she's like kind of resentful over that. And it's conflicting, right? Because I feel like I understand kind of like you have this ability, and then someone outside of you is saying like what you can and can't do with it. But then also like the nature of her ability, like someone outside of you has to be the one. You know what I mean? Like you can't be the one to decide like who you can and can't control. And it's also like really funny too, because like it very much mirrors like what magicians and unwanteds go through in the supernatural world, in which like they're not able to fully participate or fully be themselves. But then she does seem, I think, in essence, believe in the bureau. She's just power hungry for the bureau, but she wants that structure.
Yeah.
And she likes to control people. She don't want to kill them. So
right.
I think that was like a really interesting thing about just like kind of how disgusted and horrified she was in that moment. The other thing I want to talk about was Amari's goodbye speeches to Laura and Magnus, which she says to Laura, because Laura's like, what is going on? And she's like, I'm just being dramatic, which she was. But
but they were also final words.
They were final words.
Like, especially the one to Mac. Like, to Laura, it was, and like, enough that like Laura could peep something. But I also think enough that like Amari was able to kind of excuse it. And because they're going into this situation, and Laura is also a kid, and then is also immediately distracted by the fact that her brother is like threatening to kill her sister, like, you know, I can see how that would be something. But I also, you know, Amari says all this stuff to Magnus, and then I'm like, he has got to be thinking, oh,
yeah,
like, I got to get down there.
So she asked for a teleporter. They give her 2 teleporters because, you know, they got it. So Laura teleports. They count down, but Laura teleports first, and like Amari stays behind and says, meeting his eyes, looking him dead in the eyes, you never let me quit, and you kept giving me chances when I messed up. The reason I believe in myself as an agent, and the reason I know I can save everyone, is you. You're going to make a great director. And then she disappears. Like, no time for a rebuttal, nothing. And it does have like final words.
Yeah.
Like,
and like, in a sense, it's great that he was able to say that to him too before, like, you know, what she thought was going to happen is not what happened. But like, it just, it was emotional.
Yeah.
Emotional damage.
Emotional damage.
Yikes.
It's very interesting too, because we talk about like, you know, Magnus and his favorites and stuff like that. And like, I don't want to get too far into it because I'm still a little bit heartbroken. But we just went through the women's national championship. As we record this, the men are about to play. But the women just had their national championship and UConn won, and like as Paige, who's like the star player and has like had a really, really rocky and like roller coaster type of relationship with college basketball her whole time. She's been like, she was like freshman national player of the year, like the phenom. Before you heard of Caitlin Clark, it was Paige. And then she got hurt and like really was like out, like, and I think she got hurt twice. And then like one of the things about like college and like being considered like a great in college sports is like to win that national championship. And so she's already decided she's going pro, and she really wants to win this championship, and they fucking did it. Like steamrolled through the competition towards the end there, and they're like when the game was getting close to ending, her coach was like holding her and hugging her, and was like, you could see him like say that he loved her. And you see this all the time, like especially during the tournament, like when it's like the last game, if the team knows that they're going to lose, they're not going to play anymore, so it's like the seniors' last game, or you know, whatever, like that emotions that come out of that. And it's always interesting because you think about like the coach or the mentor and like them saying goodbye because they kind of are staying in that spot, but then the like kid, the star is moving on, but they're not going, they're not dying, you know, but they're moving on, and it's like another challenge or the next step thing, and they've like accomplished the thing. And so I think just because of the time of year, but it really made me think about this with Amari and Magnus, because it's like you hear about like they'll ask like, what did your coach say to you, or what did your mentor say to you, but you don't really get the other side of like, what did you say? And it's usually just like a thank you and like a thanks for believing in me and all this stuff. But like Amari is like, you're gonna be a great director, you're going to do big things, right? I'm like, you were 12, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? So
I know Magnus heard all that and was like, that was very touching, and also,
what the hell's going on?
Something's up.
Something's up.
Maybe I shouldn't have gave her that second chance.
As soon as he heard Harlow, the second message of Harlow being like, forget what I said, and saw the melee, he was like, get me a transporter.
I got to go.
Because she's about to... I gotta stop her.
She's being reckless. But, you know, it was the right plan. And the fact, that was what I wanted to say, like, the fact that she came up with that plan so quickly after finding out how Harlow's powers worked, and the fact that the magicians used recording, and she immediately was like, okay, I got, like, she knew exactly what clip to play. She knew, there was like the really like kind of, you know, the tense moment of her accidentally logging out of her account and having to log back in and all that kind of stuff. But like, like that quick thinking, I think, was really
I have to say, when I first read that part, I thought she wanted his cell phone because she was going to go and like call him and then make Harlow speak over the loudspeaker or whatever. And so to see that, like, she just pulled up that video that already existed. I was like, yeah, that's real quick thinking. And like, also me and my shoddy memory, I was like, I'd have a vague idea of what was said in that, but I wouldn't have remembered that there's like a section.
That part where it specifically says, forget what I said.
I was like, good job, Amari, on that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was like Dylan. So he's wiping out these agents. They're all kind of like stuck in a spot. And he points to Vanquish, and they're like covered. So he doesn't like, you know, but thinking about like how much real estate Maria and his, I guess not even just Maria, but like his family takes up in his brain and his like emotions, that he could like pick her out from like basically an army of agents just through like body, you know, stance and stuff. And then take the time and like, yes, he's unhinged and he's like spiraling, but like take the time to be like, what, you thought that you underestimated me yet again. You thought I'd be so easy to catch me. You don't think I'm clever enough for that. And it's like I mean, we've said it for the last 3 books, but like, therapy.
And you know, again, who needed the smoke?
Yeah.
was director
your daddy. Your daddy is in here.
Your dad is in the room somewhere.
Talk to him.
Man, call him up.
Maria ain't your mama. Maria ain't your parent. No. She did the best she could, but she also was a magician and a magician hating family and had to get the heck out.
And also was like a celebrity. Like she's what, 21?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, she probably could have paid more attention to him and like guided him through that process more, but like at the same time, again, not your mom.
And also, she knew that he was a magician, right?
Yeah.
A born magician. She like helped him figure out how to like hide it for the magic thing.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that like Amari didn't know to do. She helped him kind of navigate as much as she could, but she's got her own life.
Yeah.
And again, she's not your mama.
And again, like she's had, she does have her own guilt around that. So I'm not going to say that like she's not partially responsible, but between of the Van Helsings in the room,
right?
She is number 2 on the list.
Smoke list.
On the list, she's not number 1.
And I think it like just shows a lot about Dylan's like perspective too. That like he is like scanning, and he's not scanning to look for his dad. He's scanning to look for Maria.
But there's also the thought that like he doesn't know that his dad is no longer director too, and like maybe wouldn't expect him to be there. So there's that as well.
Yeah,
but still.
And then I mean, I guess we'll wait on the last because that's like
we can start there because the sacrifice itself happens. Yeah, we can talk about it now.
Okay. So as Amari's fading in and out, and she's seeing Quentin, whatever, and she sees Magnus, and Magnus is like, "Let me do this." He says, "Let me go back."
"Let me do this" is so freaking. It's too much.
Yeah. It's just like just a lot of like tears.
Yeah.
Tears are pouring down Amari's face. They're not pouring down Magnus's because he's a thug, but I can feel. I swear his voice is full of emotion. He leans down close, putting his mouth to her ear, and says, "I told you once that nothing comes before protecting the kids you love. You got a whole life to live, and I mean to have you see it all. If I ever meant anything to you, you'll let me do this, kid. You gotta let go." So he told her, "I love you. You have your whole life ahead of you, and you owe me to let me sacrifice for you. Because, I mean, let's go back to all the shit I let you get away with and the fact that you have not been kicked out the bureau yet.
Maybe Alston will pay for his crime. He will pay.
Like, man, sir, this is
unfair.
This is middle grade.
This isn't right.
Where's the whimsy? We've been dealing with there's been whimsy the whole time.
Now all of a sudden you just want to kick us in the gut.
Right.
In the heart.
Chapter 31, you said F the whimsy, here's the emotions.
He just reached into our chest and pulled our hearts out, crushed it with his hands.
Unacceptable.
With his bare hands.
Unacceptable. I'm all for like self-sacrifice in certain ways, but like this one.
And I think it's the word. It's like what he says to her. It's not just like, I'm jumping in front of a bullet for you type situation. It's like
I'm jumping in front of a bullet for you and I'm gonna let you know how much
and like you better let me do this. Like, and it's not even, I think, people have like survivor's guilt and all that stuff, but it's also, he's very clear, like, this is my decision and I need you to let me make it.
And it's funny too, because it like bookends very nicely
the
sacrifice that Mama Peters made at the start of this. And said, if me forgetting you is what it takes for y'all to be safe and to do what you need to do, then that's what we're going to do. And then you're going to promise me to come back. So this also allows Amari to fulfill her promise to her mama. It's just too much. If you try to attack her, she's going to hurt you. So, there you go. Little rat.
Uh-oh. The last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
Here on Wizard Team, it's no surprise that we love books. We also love supporting the independent bookstores.
With our bookshop affiliate link, you can not only get all the books on your TBR, but you can support indie bookstores and B&C at the same time.
And if you're not sure what you want, that ain't no problem. Check out our The Plot Thickens list full of recommendations from none other than Porshèa herself.
Head to www.bookshop.org/shop/BlackNerdsCreate to treat your shelves.
Treat your shelves.
Oh, that's nice. That's clever.
Oh my goodness.
That's clever.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, so
Chapter 31.
Chapter 32. So Amari is still kind of like on the floor in the warehouse. She's, alive, but flickering in and out of existence does take a toll on the body. So she's kind of like surrounded by chaos. So she sees her friends, there's agents, somehow the press are on the scene. Mr. Van Helsing, because I was like, he's not director anymore. Agent Van Helsing. He clears the way for Cursebreakers to take her away. But as they do, she catches a glimpse of Fiona crying over the relentless blade, and it hits her that Magnus is really gone. Maria goes to calm Amari down, and in that, realizes that she no longer has magic. I'm trying to remember what Maria's power was.
She was able to do the talk to you thing through touch.
Right. So maybe there was an emotional thing through that. Okay. So she realizes that she no longer has magic. And there's not a whole lot of time to kind of dwell on that before the Cursebreakers take over. They put Amari to sleep using a medicine stamp, which as an aside, I'm like, the kids need those now, because dealing with people who have phobias, they need a medicine stamp to knock them out, and not a
patch.
Yeah, but they literally, it's more like you're going to the club and they stamp your hand, or you're a kid and you get a stamp on your paper like that. But anyway, Amari wakes up in her bedroom, and her mom is waiting with her memories restored. She's relieved that Amari is awake, and then she comforts her while she's grieving Magnus. Amari then apologizes to her friends for not being fully truthful, but also lets them know that she would do it again.
And I do it again.
Sorry, I didn't tell you, but I would do the same thing again. They get some reprieve over Mama Peter's chili. And then the next morning, Quentin comes to apologize to Amari for his behavior. He then takes Amari and her friends to the bureau to be applauded for saving the world. Amari avoids most of the rigmarole that comes with being a hero. Though she does use her congressional request to stop people from being sent, or at least she's requesting it, to stop people from being sent to the sightless depths.
Because burn that to the ground.
And then she goes to visit Dylan in Blackstone, and he is the first person that she tells that she's decided to leave the supernatural world. This upsets Dylan, who still wants to be understood by Amari, still feels a deep connection with her, but also apparently has seen the future of something that may require magicians to fight or thwart or something. But Amari ignores him. She goes to turn in her badge to the director, who is now Fiona. So the two kind of they grieve Magnus together. Fiona's just trying to convince Amari to return next summer for a new junior agent program that will basically be a feeder into their special agent ranks, because they've lost a lot of agents because of Dylan. But Amari at this point has decided she's really done. As she leaves Fiona's office, she feels her magic return, and she uses it to weave an illusion over Abraham Van Helsing's statue, turning it into a tribute to Magnus. And she, like, the final kind of part, or final sentence that is like her promising to make him proud. And that's where we end.
End. I don't know if the illusion just stays, but I am also like, tear that whole thing down and actually make Magnus a statue. Mm-hmm. I want someone to put in some blood, sweat, and tears.
Yep.
Put that man's, I want it to be called...
Put it in the Louvre.
I want it to be called the Agent Magnus Department of Supernatural Investigations. Beauregard's kids.
Beauregard's kids.
I think we talk a lot about how much Amari has gone through and like not giving her time to process. And like part of me was like, well, is this another moment where, and like maybe, where she's not giving herself time to process and is like making this like big decision.
Yeah.
But then the other part of me is like, I don't think it's a bad decision though.
No, I don't think it's a bad decision. I also think, again, it's a summer camp. So Fiona's like, take time, take the rest of it, take the year and come back to us next year and do the thing. And like, for now, Amari's saying no, but I don't think that it's like, it doesn't feel like, one, it feels like she'll be back. Yeah. I mean, we know. Whether she'll be back in that way though, who can say? But like, also, her saying no in that moment doesn't necessarily mean that it's the only time she'll have that offer.
Yeah. And for me, it was more the fact that she was saying she's leaving the supernatural world.
Yeah.
And, but when her magic comes back, she doesn't, I'm assuming there's something that like, you put in the true sight drops. I'm assuming there's a anti-true sight.
Maybe, yeah.
Or whatever. So she doesn't ask for that. Like, she still knows and sees everything. She hasn't forgotten. She didn't ask for her memory to be wiped. But like...
She's just like, I don't want to be an agent or want to... And and like you said, like, it makes a lot of sense based on what she's experienced, what she's seen. Like, she's tired. Yeah. And she's grieving. And she's grieving. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that like really stood out to me in terms of like the grief part is like for Amari, a lot of the last like couple of chapters too, she's really like thinking about sacrifice and the sacrifices that have been made in her opinion for her. The sacrifices other people have done for her, and then Magnus makes like this ultimate sacrifice, right? And so I think a lot of that, again, she needs to process all of that. She needs to like come to terms with it in whichever way makes the most sense for her. But I do wonder, and we talked about this in terms of like a thought experiment or whatever, that just like the supernatural investigations is not the place in which Amari thrives, like, or at least she thrives when she's going against their rules, regulations, and systems. But does that mean that the entire bureau is a place in which she wouldn't thrive, or where would she be?
Is there another department or another like program that she would be better off
in? But then this like glimpse of the future thing.
Yeah, so but backing up a little bit. So one, why and how are the press at the warehouse?
The PR machine in the supernatural world
is insane. Like, why are you here and how did you get here and like what's going on? Also, I'm curious about this, like,
I feel like they wiretap.
Yeah, but then I'm like, are y'all just waiting outside? You heard the news, you just waiting outside, and then as soon as you get the all clear, you can come in.
Yeah, I feel like someone has tapped into the like internal comms.
And it's like
as soon as I know I'm not about to die.
Right.
I'm gonna be first on the
scene.
Coming
through. Also, I feel like we're getting, I mean, we'll see. I feel like there's some telegraphing of like director Van Helsing growth. Just in the way that, like, he's the one to clear the press away from Amari. He actually refers to her as an agent. Him giving Lara that, like, clue about the tip about the sightless depths. Like, it does feel like he maybe is, we'll see, obviously, like, is he coming to terms with, like, the harm that he's caused, both like his family, but then by extension the supernatural world. Imagine, like, your own parenting. I know there are people in the world who this has happened to, and this is their experience, that their parenting has, like, changed the world for better or worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
I'm sorry, but in order for me to sleep well at night, this is, like, not very important, but I have to believe that he told Lara about the sightless depths as a deterrent and not as, like, help.
I don't necessarily, I wouldn't say that he was saying, I wouldn't say that he was like, yeah, you should go there. I think he was more on the point of, like, you're going to do this anyway. I'm not going to hinder you. And I have this information. Like, I didn't read it as a, like, we need you to go. I read it more as I'm, as a father, not gonna stand in your way in the ways that I have been.
Okay.
That's how I read it. Not as that's how I interpreted it. But not as a, like, oh, you should go to the sightless depths.
I interpreted it as a, yeah, you want to know where he is?
Right. I mean, there's also that too, of the, like, I'm gonna tell you. I can also see the, like, oh, I'm gonna tell you where he is, but, like, not believe that you'll actually do it. Like, maybe you have a limit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm again, this is not me giving him his things. It's just me making an observation and, like, just theorizing that he may end up, if not being a good person, because I think that would take more work, but at least, like, being less of an antagonist.
Yeah.
The other thing is there's only 2 magicians left, so the
league is no
more. The league is no more because the crown has been destroyed. All of that magic that was put into it is gone.
Is it gone, or is it just out in the world?
It might be out in the world. Like, I'm curious if there are, because obviously there's these anti-magic objects, but they were created by the first magician. So I'm curious of, like, where that magic was in the first place. You know what I mean? Because the first magician was a born magician. He's gathering this magic into the crown, realizes that that's messing with his head. So he gets these, or I don't even know if he does that. It sounds like the magic got to his head, and then, like, but he did have apprentices, but maybe his apprentices were more for the, like.
Well, I think they were more acolytes. Like, I think he had.
That's what. That's what I was gonna say. Like, henchmen was what I was thinking about. Acolytes, I feel like, is better. So yeah, it sounds to me that, like, he was a born magician. He had. I wonder who his second person was, though, but because I think it's 2 in a generation, so I wonder who. That'll be interesting to learn about. But anyway, has his acolytes. They realize his mind is kind of doing some things, being affected by the magic. They defeat him. They hide the wonders he created. The Night Brothers are the ones who find the wonders, realize what the thing is, create the league to disperse that magic. And now that the crown is gone, because it's not the source of the magic, but it is for their intent, for their, like, purposes. Then the league is gone because they don't have that magic anymore. But yeah, I'm curious where that magic came from, and, like, where, like, is there a place that you can, like, siphon magic? Is it in specific objects? Is it in specific, like, creatures or certain thing? Like, is it, you know what I mean? And I'm curious because, you know, like, they have the crystal ball or whatever at the bureau, and that is a holder of magic. Like, that's how they disperse their little, like, percentages to people. So I'm curious if there are, like, maybe when the next book we'll learn, like, where magic actually comes from.
I like to think of it as, this is my, it's not even a theory for Amari. This is just, like, my constant theory about, like, magic and fantasy, is that it is, like, an element, like, energy, then different, you know, you can make, like, energy from fossil fuels, you can make energy from solar, you know, and so I think, I hope it goes back to its original, it gets dispersed and kind of gets reabsorbed into its original source. But then, is there some evil magic scientist in, like, Elsie's department who's gonna come up?
So, I don't know. Okay, we did. I kind of want to talk about, because Dylan's thing is, I was going in like order of chronological, but I think that talking about Dylan next makes more sense. But I did want to say before I go into Dylan, yeah, I'm just curious. I wonder what we're gonna learn. I feel like, again, and like I said, like the second person, maybe they just were killed, but maybe they're still out there. Because it's a generation. So like Dylan and Amari got their magic while Moreau was still alive. So it's not like there can only be two magicians.
Oh my God.
Right? It's not that there can only be two magicians, one magician at a time. It's just per generation. And I think, and then I'm curious because...
But also, it's Dylan and Amari, the born magicians, the generation after the Knight brothers, because they have been out here for
they were
centuries.
7. That's what I was gonna ask, because like they were like 700 years old. But maybe it's or is it like, oh, one has to die for like two to be born? Maybe that's the marker of the end of the generation.
BB, we got questions. I don't know. I like to believe that there are born magicians who didn't want the smoke.
Yeah, that's possible too.
And maybe like hid within
like
every
20 years.
Or
that just feels too like because
like Amari, a born magician but wasn't brought into the supernatural world, the bureau, so they just don't know.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there are more magicians out there that we don't know about, and whether or not there's like a whole like hundreds like the League, or if they're just like, you know, somebody super old in the cuts, maybe in one of the Sasquatch,
in the Mafia,
or just like in one of their lairs, like who can say? But yeah, I feel like that's interesting. I also feel like it's interesting that Amari's magic comes back in that moment at the end, especially after she decides she's done with the supernatural world. I think that's an interesting, like, there's so many things in the last chapter that tell you that this is not the end of the series.
Yeah.
That I think is interesting because it could be, like, it could have ended there.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I'm sure, I don't know exactly what the process was for him selling the, like, next 2 books. But I wonder if his initial drafts, this was the finale, and then when he was able to sell more, he was like, okay, I can like go back and kind of add things, because it does end as its own kind of, Amari being like, I'm done is an ending.
Yeah.
You know? And in this way, it's kind of a foreshadowing, which like gets me into Dylan's thing, where like Dylan's like, you know, she's saying her goodbyes, and he's like, this isn't over, we're connected, I saw the future, like, woo doo doo. And in a way, it's like, she doesn't really process it, and obviously it'll come back up, but like, it's more for us to like, it's more for the reader to be like, okay, we have more coming, like, this isn't the end of the story, even though it could be. So I like that, and like Amari getting her magic back, which I assume that's just because like, now that the crown's been destroyed, it's like everything going back to
where it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
it's like source or
yeah. It also kind of foreshadows like Amari and Dylan maybe being on the same side at some point, and I don't think that it would necessarily turn into like a Dylan. It doesn't sound like he is going to be redeemed.
Yeah,
but he's saying he saw something like.
It's like a necessity.
I feel like the first. I think my theory is
the
first magician is coming back. Like, that's what I think. I've been thinking it since they mentioned it. Like, since he was first mentioned, I was like, oh, this dude. I think he might,
because he was just like imprisoned. He wasn't.
Yeah, he was. They were like, they didn't kill him. They had to imprison him. And again, we still don't know about his like counterpart, but I feel like that's who the big bad is. Or I mean, is going to be, because Dylan is definitely the big bad for these like first 3 books. Well, I would say the last 2. Yeah. Especially, well, yeah, he was the big bad in the last book. I don't know. I feel like, you know,
he was a big bad in the first book too.
I would say he was.
We didn't know.
But I would say in terms of like capital B, I feel like Moreau was the like main bad in that one, and then it was revealed that Dylan was more. And then the second one, I would say more. It's Dylan, but it's more Harlow and Cosmo.
Yeah.
And then this one is more like Dylan is always there and ever present and like the larger threat, but in terms of like, so maybe not Big B, but like the direct, like the most pressing
I was going to talk about
Bad.
that Wizard Boy. I was going to be like, he's the Voldemort of the series.
Right.
We got our.
But I don't think. But again, I don't know
we got
that he.
ourselves a-
Right, exactly. But I don't think that he. Again, I don't think for the next two, I kind of don't think that he's going to be the
that.
big. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that like I would be interested to see like what happens between him and his family more than like him and Amari. I feel like they like Dylan. Obviously, he really wants to be like connected to Amari in some way, but like, yeah. Anyway, Quentin's apology.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a start. I feel like it's a start. I feel like I think that's what it is. I think that he still also has his own work to do when it comes to like his loyalty to the Bureau. And like yeah, just like his expectations, like, or not his expectations. He talks about like he has these kind of like biases and like blind spots, and then especially when it comes to people that you love, it just like thinking of them. He was saying like he gets used to thinking of people in one way,
Yeah,
and has a hard time adjusting, which I feel like is a fair thing to experience, and especially given like him coming out of that coma, like things were the landscape was much different than when he went in. And I also think we'll just have to see like how he progresses. Like I don't
yeah, I was hoping that like we will see. Well, I don't know what is it the unwanted that are not magicians, right? Like the witches that Amari played spades with are not magicians, right? They're witches. I believe.
Yeah, they're not magicians.
Like I was hoping that it would mean that they would bring those people. It not that just because Quentin's decided that he has this epiphany, but like he would help lead the charge to sort of like try to bring those people in.
Yeah, and maybe that's
like his kind of like atonement, but also like his way of like working towards just like breaking down a lot of those things that he's set up. I do wonder in two ways. Like we don't believe that Amari is actually done with the supernatural world. No. Obviously, there's 2 more books, but like in some way, is he able to deal with Amari and like fix their relationship, come to terms with who Amari is as a magician and all that stuff? Like, is that going to be easier because she stepped away? And then once she returns, and however which way she returns, like does that 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or whatever, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, whatever that saying is, one of those. Some cha-cha-cha.
I could also see if she's coming back for the junior agent thing, I could see Quentin being a teacher.
Yeah.
And that's a different dynamic.
And
and
Maria was like saying she wanted to like get away from the field and do the teaching bit. So
and now that Fiona's director, like I could definitely see
Magnus is gone. I could see that being like him stepping in to be the new Magnus.
I could definitely and I could definitely see like siblings always have
issues.
Yeah, arguments, like, whatever. But I don't necessarily, I feel like this particular dynamic or like conflict that they've had is probably closed. And then there's just like room for new ones. Or even if it's not completely closed, because again, Amari doesn't really follow orders. So it's like the same as like her when she was apologizing to her friends and she's like, I'm sorry, this is why I did it and I would do it again, but I am sorry I didn't tell you.
Yeah.
Like it could just be one of those where he's kind of like, all right, this is what Magnus was dealing with. Crazy.
Yep. I do think though, in terms of like their relationship and stuff, I was getting the sense that like it would be closer to what Amari was hoping it would be, like that they would be partners type of thing. And so either he goes into teaching and becomes the new Magnus, or because Maria wants to go into teaching, Vanquish becomes the Peters pair or something. But you know, I that means that there's like a new squad, which
yeah, that's also
whatever. But
I feel like at a certain point, I'm curious. I mean, obviously, like the departments work together well, but I'm like, Amari's squad is not like you got an agent, you got 2 agents, a scientist, and a like
creature control.
Yeah, what are they? Are they zookeepers? Something like that.
Zoologists?
Some beastkeepers. A beastkeeper, a scientist, and 2 agents. So I'm also like, it could also be a situation where they start kind of like mixing the groups up in a way. Who could say? There's so many things that could happen. I'm excited. Okay, final thing was Amari and Fiona at the end. I feel like was so
BB Austin, you'll pay for your crimes.
And like so important and so emotional. And it was just like, she's obviously grieving, but she's also, you know, being the adult, also understand, you know, it's a different dynamic when somebody like dies for you, even if the person who did that was your fiance, right? Like you're just, so they have these like different, they're grieving him in different ways. But I love the way that she's like Amari for some reason thought that Fiona would be mad at her, and Fiona's like, girl, what are you talking about? Like high key, that's part of the reason why she loved him in the first place. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, and like maybe he shouldn't have favorites, but like, you know, if you're gonna have a favorite, I guess in a way you could be willing to die for them. But at least in this setup, this world. And then I also really loved the moment where Amari was like, because she was like saying like, oh, I'm leaving the supernatural world, but then she's like, but could I still like call you to talk about Magnus sometimes? And I'm just like, it's just too much. So I'm just like really excited to see more of how their relationship evolves, because it really has been like, I've really loved that just throughout the books that we've had so far, the ways that like Magnus and Fiona have both been there for Amari and stood up for her and pushed her and challenged her and like checked her and all of those things. And they've done it like together and also separately. And so it's like Amari has lost Magnus, but she still has someone there who she has that like a similar relationship to. So it's not like she's completely on her own in that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so sweet. Also, Fiona mentions her daughter again.
Yeah.
This is the first time, I think the first time she just says a kid, and this time daughter. So I'm wondering if
is she 11
if we're
soon?
gonna have baby Fiona pop up soon. But yeah.
I was also like thinking about Fiona and Amari's relationship. Like Magnus and Fiona were the 2 adults in Amari's like entrance into the supernatural world who not only had her back, but like you said, like showed up for her in different ways. But then I was like, you think that they're like end of the day climbing in bed being like, ooh, child, let me tell you what Amari did. Oh,
probably.
Sir.
It's got to be.
You should have seen what was going on in my classroom. And so I'm wondering too, like, how Fiona's, I mean, I don't know if it's something that we would see or not, but like how Fiona's relationship with Amari deepens because they have this shared grief over Magnus, but also changes a little bit because Fiona doesn't have maybe Maria, because I don't, or Quentin becomes, but Fiona doesn't have that like.
I mean, yeah, the relationship is gonna change, but because they're like, I think also her
position has changed, yeah.
Too. So yeah, cool. So who is your MVP?
Magnus.
Yeah, same. And Porshèa also, she mentioned last episode, same. Benched.
So I benched. Who did I bench? I benched Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm get to the point where it's like I get a little bit like not bored by benching Dylan, but like it's so easy, you know, or whatever. But then he'll do something or he'll say something, like, and it's like
it's No.
There's no other choice.
Yeah.
It has to be this way.
He's the big bad.
And I think that, like, for me, even with the, like, lens of increase and anti-magic and all of that stuff, whatever. But when she goes to see him in Blackstone prison and says goodbye, and he is still like, but we belong together. Like, I was like,
why are you so obsessed with me?
And what's really funny is that, like, it wasn't really until you mentioned, like, I've seen like, I even took that, because I'm thinking about it the way that, like, probably Amari is just like, okay, yeah, sure.
Right, yeah, of course.
We're not done.
Like, all right, girl.
Sure.
We're not done. But
like,
again,
this is my number.
Yeah. 100%.
I'm going to leave you on red. Block,
100%.
block.
It's like both and. Yeah, agreed. I'm like, at that, like, it's got to be Dylan for this point. At this point. But special shout out to former director Van Helsing.
Yeah.
He too deserves smoke, as we've said.
Porshèa bench Cosmo. I'm guessing because Cosmo is the reason for the season. She said why in the last episode.
So we just go back and
but like he made that dumbass decision, which led us here.
Mm-hmm.
So
cool. On that note, thank you for listening. Join us next week when we wrap up our season of Amari and Despicable Wonders. That's crazy. Still time to join us live for next week if you want. You can become a baddie and join our live recordings on Sundays at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern. After next episode, we'll be on hiatus for like a month or so. Some change. A month-ish. So there'll be some like updates and stuff. So just like, become a baddie, follow us and stuff.
Stay in the loop.
Yeah, we'll have things to say.
And you'll figure out what our next read will be.
Mm-hmm.
Wizard Team is a part of the Black Nerds Create Collective. If you want to keep up with our content, you can check out our website at blacknerdscreate.com. Follow us on Instagram and Tumblr at Wizard Team Pod and at Black Nerds Create. Bye.
Bye.